The Battle of Cadia in Space and Stalemate. The Imperial fleet in orbit of Cadia above the valiant Imperial defenders on the ground was also gathered for its final stand, determined to gain time for the Eldar led by Farseer Ultran to board the Blackstone Fortress and disable it from within. If the Xenos proved successful, the Imperial forces might live to fight another day. Should they fail, the world of Cadia and all who stood upon it would be scoured away by the power of the warp unleashed upon its surface by the Blackstone fortresses moving into orbit above them. This had been Abbadon's plan all along in launching the 13th Black Crusade. Everything had led to this particular moment. Soon the battle in orbit was underway. True to their word, the Eldar's potent fleet fought side by side with the vessels of the Imperial Navy. The toll taken upon these combined forces of order was fearsome indeed, but its desperate endeavor was worthy of the greatest of sacrifices, for failure meant that the Cadian gate would lie open for Abbadon to launch his campaign against Terra, and succeed where his master Horus had once failed. The details of the battle in orbit that ultimately saw the Blackstone Fortress defeated are difficult to piece together, in the wake of the chaos caused to the Cadian High Command by Imperial retreat from Kasr Partox. Admiral Quarren, who commanded the Imperial fleet that defended Cadia, reported that the bulk of his fleet was destroyed, many vessels having paid the ultimate price to ensure the Farseer of Ultwi the time necessary to complete his vital mission. It appeared that the Farseer's vessel, the Ishara, penetrated deep through the Chaos Fleet's lines, many of its sister warships being destroyed in action. Once close enough to do so, Ultron boarded the Blackstone Fortress and has not been seen or heard from since. At the height of this battle, it is reported that a fleet of Necron vessels appeared as if from nowhere and assaulted both the Blackstone Fortress and the Chaos Warfleet. So confused and incomplete are the Imperial records of this engagement that the Cadian High Command may never piece together the true details of how victory was won in orbit. Regardless of their reasons for doing so, the Necron ships forced the Blackstone Fortress to disengage from its approach on Cadia, and contact with it was lost soon after as it fled the Cadian system. The last Imperial forces knew of what had happened to the so-called Talisman of Val was reported by a psyker attached to the Cadian High Command's general staff, Lieutenant Fortuna, who was struck down with a vision of Farseer Ultron trapped within a shimmering crystal, his soul scream echoing throughout the warp. No doubt the Imperial seers and savants would be looking to unravel this mystery for many years to come. Yet the final outcome of the Battle of Cadia, no matter how it had been arrived at, was clear. The forces of chaos had seized a large portion of the surface of Cadia, but the Imperial and Eldar victory in orbit forced the Chaos Warfleet to retreat back towards the Eye of Terror, giving the Imperium naval superiority in the Cadian system, and the broader Cadian Gate. It provided the servants of the Emperor with the ability to keep the forces of chaos contained on the surface of Cadia, where ground operations slowly ground to a stalemate, with neither side able to make headway against the other. While the Imperium possessed air superiority, the forces of chaos' sheer numbers prevented them from being dislodged from their occupied territory. Should the second chaos assault come and break the Imperial blockade, there was little chance that the Emperor's faithful would be able to hold the fortress world without further reinforcements. Outcome of the initial siege. Darkness descends. A limited chaos victory. Where is the Cadian and the Rhino? Where is the Vox that was blaring? They have passed like drop pods from a Dauntless, like wind on a Kakadisaya sea. The day come down in the waste behind the hives, to shadow. How did it come to this? Lord Castellan Creed on the eve of the final assault on Cadia. Darkness had fallen across 100 worlds, and for the defenders of the Cadian Gate, the pure light of day now seems but a distant memory. Though the forces of Abbadon the Despoiler were denied the ultimate prize of the fall of Cadia after the first phase of the 13th Black Crusade, Abbadon's hordes have gained a foothold upon the world of mankind for the first time in 10,000 standard years, and none can see them being repelled for many years to come. Abbadon and his Council of Three have outmaneuvered and outfought the forces of the Imperium at almost every turn. Corpses litter the battlefield in their millions, yet millions more still stand beleaguered against a foe that knows no mercy and whose only goal is the utter destruction of all who stand before them. The bleak moors of Cadia have been reduced to a barren, crater-pocked wasteland, blasted by orbital torpedoes, super heavy artillery, and the massive footfalls of titans. The Vilkas and Andur defense lines have collapsed under the relentless pressure of a million frenzied chaos cultists, traitors, and mutants, and the Cadian Sector High Command has been forced to relocate to Kasar Galan on the far side of the Kadis Sea. Though the Imperial Navy is in control of their inner system, space lanes of the Cadian sector, the forces of chaos still maintain a powerful presence in the skies. Directly above Cadia, it is capable of challenging the Imperial fleet since the Imperial orbit defenses fell in the opening days of the 13th Black Crusade. The defenders of Cadia are now deployed on the Kasir Galan and throughout the wastes, resolute that not a backward step shall be taken. The order has been given: stand at Cadia or damn the imperium of mankind to the depredations of chaos for eternity. The long-held dominance of the imperium, the Segmentum Obscuris, has been decisively shattered. Chaos forces roam freely on the once proud worlds of Scarus, Agrippina, and even within the Cadian system. Whole worlds have fallen to the tide of disorder that has swept across the sectors of the Segmentum. Abbadon's 13th Black Crusade appears to have been a modest success, although he cannot claim complete dominion over the Cadian pylons. The damage and chaos inflicted upon the Imperium will have severely weakened its activities within the Segmentum long into the new millennium. Commanded by the shadowy triad, the Council of Chaos Champions that controls the Planet Killer, and groups of dedicated tacticians of the servants of the ruinous powers have come away with a win. It is a slim win, but a win nonetheless. The desperate actions of a few heroes within the Imperial hierarchy have, however, held the forces of chaos at bay in several sectors and star systems, claiming outright victory in the most of the outlying sectors and preventing total catastrophe for the Imperial forces in the inner sectors of the Segmentum. Though Abbadon's final goal of smashing through the Cadian Gate was ultimately unsuccessful, the advances made by his forces have gained him much more than was initially realized. His retinue of Chosen, led by Devram Korda, the tyrant of Sarora, returned to his side in the closing days of the war, bringing with them two individuals who had journeyed to the center of the Eye of Terror. Together with the Chaos Sorcerer Igitmor the Deceiver, this is another one of those ugly names like in the Dorobutian heresy. They presented Abbadon with a Heart of Chaos, a powerful chaos artifact that Zaphariston, the Chaos Sorcerer who has served as one of Abbadon's chosen, had long claimed could not exist. It is known that whatever this guy's name is now stands at Abbadon's right hand, while Zarafastion's status remains a mystery. Cadian Sector. The fortress world of Cadia still stands, but she stands alone, a failing beacon of the Emperor's light flickering against the encroaching night. Total war has come to the Segmentum Obscurus, and all hopes of repelling the invaders have been dashed for the moment. The Imperium must now consolidate its grip upon those worlds of the Segmentum it still holds, and prepare to fight a war that will not end within the lifetime of any of its combatants. While Cadia still stands, humanity has reason to hope, but Abbadon the despoiler has finally reached what he had failed to do on 12 previous occasions. Over more than 10,000 standard years, he has breached the Cadian gate, and none can now hold back the eventual tide of chaos he will seek to unleash upon the imperium of mankind, of course. The force of chaos won a small, if insignificant, victory over the imperium and the eldar, capturing a number of imperial worlds in the sector beyond the Cadian gate, for the first time since the Horus Heresy. Cadia still stands, but only just, as most of the planet's surface belongs to chaos. The battle for Cadia will last centuries without aid, but if chaos gains headway in the space above Cadia, then the defenders will be doomed, especially with the Blackstone fortress still lurking somewhere. Even without aid to the Imperial forces in orbit, there is a larger chance that simple supplies such as food will be unable to reach the defenders, and that the defenders will eventually starve to death. No man, no space marine, fought harder to save Cadia than the Lord Castellan Creed. Although each castellum level cut him deep, the fate of Creed proved unshakable. His victories could not easily be counted, but the numbers of the arch-enemy did not lessen, whereas each defeat drained the strength of the Imperial forces. Creed was forced first to give ground to preserve his forces, and then to abandon his favored mobile defense tactics in favor of defending fortified lines. His friend, Jalan Kel, was wounded, defending him from yet another Chaos champion, eager to make a name, and Creed was fatigued to the point of collapse when finally the momentum of the Chaos forces ran out. The Inquisition fortress world of Nemesis Tessera, its existence supposedly unknown to all but the highest members of the Inquisition, came under fierce attack during Abbadon's 13th Black Crusade. The system surrounding the Inquisition fortress world experienced hitherto unknown level of civil insurrection that could not be explained without recourse to the malign influence of the ruinous powers. In one such incident, a previously peaceful sect of contemplative monks turned on the populace of the nearby planet Trionara, engaging in a series of bloody massacres across the planet's surface. Although heretical strike teams were dispatched to quell these killing sprees, they discovered the barricaded monasteries to be full of corpses, the monks having chosen to end their lives in an orgy of self-mutilation. The monasteries were burned to the ground, the ruins sown with salt, and reconsecrated. While agents of the Inquisition policed the systems surrounding their fortress, many strange omens and portents were unearthed, all indicating great disasters. Many believed this simply to be foretelling of the invasion of Abbadon, but other, more cautious inquisitors believe it to be something more. These doomsayers were proved correct when the blind servers of Nemesis Tessera detected unauthorized psychic activity within the depths of the fortress itself. Inquisitor Van Hel, a radical inquisitor who delved too deeply into mysteries best left alone, had been seduced by the whispered promises of the ruinous powers, and only the timely intervention of Inquisitor Ciaro prevented the warp rift of cataclysmic proportions from developing. At almost the exact same time, a determined force of Chaos Space Marines launched an attack on the Inquisition fortress and laid siege to it for many months. Only the timely arrival of the Space Wolves saved the beleaguered Inquisitorial forces, and the combined forces of the Inquisition and the Sons of Rus were finally able to repulse the attack. The reason why the Space Wolves abandoned their previous station to deploy throughout the Nemesis Tessera subsector remains a mystery. Scarus Sector. During Abbadon's 13th Black Crusade, the War Master of Chaos Undivided recruited massive warbands of orks to act as mercenary auxilia to his Chaos legions. Following up on terror raids and cunning feints by the Night Lords and Alpha Legion, many of the orks banded together into ever-growing tribes that declared themselves to be part of the Green Crusade. The unstoppable force of the Crusade inundated the Scarus sector, Scar-Uz to the orks, battering down imperial defenses with sheer doggedness and not without a little help from the Chaos Space Marines, particularly those of the Night Lords and the Black Legion. Now the orks rule both the worlds of Lelthi 9, or 11, and the Forge world of Mordax Prime, along with most of Imbrium and Ulnat. Gurdun and Nisas, Stromolo, stand on the brink of anarchy, and the weapon forges of Mordax Prime, rechristened Mordaka by the orks, are infested with Lutas of the Death Skull clan, a truly terrifying prospect to the devotees of the machine god, who know full well the depths of blasphemy against the Omnissiah to which these barbaric Xenos will sink. Battle survivors speak of hundreds of gargants being built from the debris of war by enslaved servitors and their brutal greenskin overseers. The squat, menacing form of more gargant construction sites climbing over the plains of Mordax's dairy as orc mech boys race to be the first to complete their war machines. Imperial strategists now regard the Green Crusade as a full-scale orc war, as commanding warlords remaining unknown, but it will later appear that Gazgul and Nazdrek are not among them. Only Thracian Primaris holds firm against the Green Crusade, bolstered first by the intervention of a Black Templars crusade, and later by the stalwart defense mounted by the Salamanders chapter. The situation is grim in the Scarus sector, and none can see an end to the infestation given the dire situation across the region. Schellus was the homeworld of the renegade Space Marines of the Sons of Malice chapter, and was declared perdita at the time of the chapter turned upon the Imperium. Or was I? Yes. A cold, desolate place, Schellus is a home to the savage and barbaric tribes from which the Sons of Malice recruited their number. Though reports from the front line as to Schellus are unclear on the subject, reliable sources state that the invading force of Chaos joined with the native tribes, establishing a potential huge power base within a short space of time at the strategical vital location. The forces of the Imperium were in no position to oppose this state of affairs in the initial stages of the invasion, as every available Imperial Guard regiment was committed elsewhere, and none could relocate swiftly enough to oppose Abbadon's plans for Schellus. However, Abbadon's plans were in fact opposed, and very soon the Imperium was in full control of Schellus, having slaughtered the invaders without mercy. The exact identity of the Imperial forces that liberated the system is unclear, though this is far from unusual in a region within which uncounted millions of soldiers are fighting, with more arriving every single day. That the liberators were Space Marines is known, though the exact chapter is not. It was reported that several chapters were located within a short warp jump to Schellus in the days leading up to his liberation, including the Night Watch, the Subjugators, and the Howling Griffins. Nothing has been heard of from any Imperial force in the area, and it is suspected by some that a Space Marine chapter has claimed Schellus as its homeworld by right of conquest. In the current climate, none of Segmentum Obscurus High Command would argue against such a move. Bellis Corona sector. The Imperial forces have largely held at Bellis Corona, the location of the greatest shipyard of the Imperium, which suffered the worst excesses of Tyrannid's Splinter Hive Fleet, and the horrific plagues bestowed upon its hive cities by the Death Guard Traitor Legion. At the height of the invasion, something truly unexpected occurred. Defenders in the outlying system reported contact with Tyrannid organisms. At first, individual vanguard organisms such as lictors, but soon entire broods of gene stealers and hormogons. A splinter fleet of Hive Fleet Leviathan, a Tyrannid fleet known to be attacking up to the galactic plane, was taking advantage of the mass destruction initiated by the chaotic invasion to gain a foothold in the strategically vital Imperial space. Faced with both the pestilent forces of the Death Guard and the voracious hordes of Tyrannids who were unlike the human defenders, immune to the plague god's blessings, the forces of the Imperium were hard-pressed to defend the vital worlds of the sector. It was the intervention of the forces of Eldar of the Ultwi craft world, and then the orbital bombardment of Laurentix that allowed the force of the Imperium to fight back, despite the disastrous ambush of forward elements of Battlefleet Solar at the Baristan Prime warp jump point. Subiaco Diablo saw the Covenant of the Order of the Ermine Mantle hold against overwhelming odds, though at terrible cost, before being relieved by a host of Adeptas Sororitas, units drawn from across the region, thanks to the leadership of the renowned Canoness Astra. Agrippina Sector. The industrial heartland of the Cadian Gate lies in ruin. Though the Imperial Navy controls its space, many worlds of the Agrippina sector are lost to anarchy and destruction. By the end of the war, the planets Albitern, Amistel, Lelitar, Malm's Reach, Ultor, and Yavar lay in ruins, and a number of other key star systems hung in the balance. Though Agrippina itself still stands without the agri worlds of Yayor, Ultor, and Denethor, its populace may yet starve to death, and without the vital materials provided by the hive worlds of Albitern, Amistel, and Tabor, its mighty forges may yet fall silent. The so-called Herald of Nurgle, Typhus, of the Death Guard Traitor Legion, has claimed the now blasted world of Ulthor as his own realm, and the nightmare visions of 1,000 astropaths tell of the birth of a new demon world within the realm of mankind. Further, unconfirmed reports state that one of the Black Fortresses was destroyed by Necron raiders off the shoulder of the Lustia Belt. Senior members of the Ordo Xenos are en route to the area, and Death Watch strike cruisers are already engaged in ensuring no vessel other than their own enter the region. Striding through the blackened ruins of the ravaged worlds of the Imperium, crushing the bones of the slain beneath his Chaos Terminator armor, and spreading the vilest afflictions of Nurgle, Typhus was the embodiment of terror, a cursed thing too terrible to name. His ship, the Terminus Est, and supporting Plague Fleet were one of their largest Chaos battle groups remaining active throughout the war, and allowed Typhus to terrorize war zone after war zone. It was on the world of Ulthor in the Agrippina sector that Typhus unleashed his greatest sorceries, exhibiting the greatest favor in which he is held by Nurgle. The once verdant Agri world was utterly twisted and corrupted. The taint of the Herald devolved whatever life it found, rendering it down into a formless sea of putrescence. Seeing his handiwork, Typhus took the nascent demon world for his own, a stronghold beyond the Cadian Gate, from which he can bring terror to the other worlds of the Imperium at his leisure. Sentinel Worlds. The barren Sentinel worlds in the southwest quadrant of the Eye of Terror have always been thought to be a collection of mostly featureless rock held together by specific gravitational anomalies. The Adeptus Mechanicus have done much to discourage development in this region, due to their facilities stationed on Hydra Cordatus, a relatively unremarkable planet holding a potent secret. It was one of the few locations in the galaxy where the Adeptus Mechanicus stored its tides of space marine gene seed, in this case genetic material drawn from the Imperial Fist chapter. The planet consisted of only a spaceport and a single large citadel and manufactorum complex, known as the Tor Christo. The Tor Christo was a large star-shaped fortress connected to a smaller half-star fortress built into the side of a nearby mountain. The citadel had a large garrison of Imperial Guard troops and even a small Titan Legion contingent from the Legio Ignatum to protect its precious contents. Remaining undisturbed for centuries, there were unconfirmed reports of a great Iron Warrior invasion into the system, preceding even the Hive Teriax disaster in the opening phase of the 13th Black Crusade. During the siege of the large Imperial Citadel and Manufactorum complex on Hydra Cordatus, a faint psychic beacon was transmitted from the surface of the planet. The Iron Warriors Warband's flagship, Stonebreaker, was sent to the star system's warp translation point in order to intercept any Imperial reinforcements. But this action allowed an Imperial Fist company to slip past the flagship and infiltrate the planet's surface and reinforce the besieged Mechanicus garrison. Inevitably, the Iron Warriors emerged triumphant. They defeated the Imperial forces defending Tor Christo as well as the Imperial Fist Company, having greatly pleased the Chaos Gods through his monumental victory over the Imperium. The commanding warsmith of the attack on Hydrocordatus was ascended to become a demon prince. During the opening stages of the 13th Black Crusade, the Sentinel worlds had little in the way of full-scale engagement, although a node in the webway stationed above these worlds saw a lot of conflict between the Eldar and their chaotic enemies. The most notable development emerged from this unregarded backwater sector, just as the water reached its peak with hordes of silver Necron warriors emerging from hidden tombs on the 4 planets surrounding Hydra Cordatus in a rough pyramidal pattern. The Imperial forces stationed nearby feared the worst, but were amazed when the Necrons fell upon the warriors of Chaos, turning the tide in the favor of the Imperium. Since that time, the increased Necron activity in the sector has prevented any Imperial forces from capitalizing upon these victories, and remote orbital pick captures have even revealed several structures almost identical to the Cadian pylons sprutting across the landscapes of these 4 Sentinel worlds. Chinchar subsector. We didn't even talk about Chinchar until now. Imperial forces largely ignored the mostly uninhabited Chinchar subsector in the early stages of the war. Though the forces garrisoned throughout the region were hard-pressed to contain the initial surge of Chaos invaders, reports of the increased Chaos activity drew more forces there as the war went on, and the Eldar forces of Ulthui fought hard and spilled much blood in order to wrestle control of the subsector from the ruinous powers. Ulthui's strike forces struck at the key points within the system surrounding Chinchar to deny the forces of Abbadon any cohesion to their armies. Striking behind the lines of the main Chaos thirst, precious resources were diverted from the forces of Chaos front line to deal with the raiding Eldar in the rear. These forces dispatched to deal with the Eldar were themselves ambushed and destroyed piecemeal. Such superiority brought with it an arrogant belief that the Eldar strike forces were invulnerable, but such was not to be the case, as Ahriman, the Thousand Suns Chaos Sorcerer, wove powerful magics to disrupt the path of the webway, twisting it and rippling portions of it asunder. Much was the lamentation of Ulthui, as many of the Craft World's strike forces were trapped forever in the webway or lost in the haunted depths of the warp. While Ulthui reeled from these terrible losses, the Chaos forces pressed their attack and launched devastating counterattack against Imperial forces, particularly those based on Balzac. The Imperial troops were in danger of being overrun completely, before being suddenly and decisively aided by Eldar emerging from the shimmering webway portals. These mysterious benefactors asked nothing in return for their aid, and vanished without a word of explanation. As more and more reports were collated, it appeared that these silent Eldar had appeared virtually simultaneously throughout the subsector, effectively stemming the Chaos attack. As the Chaos forces reeled, the vengeful Eldar, combined with the might of the Imperial forces, were able to rout the followers of the Dark Gods from the Chinchar subsector completely. The Relicators. As a result of the actions of the recalcitrant chapter known as the Relicators and their conflict with the Inquisition over the use of chaotic artifacts, the Relicators were judged to be extremis diabolus, their lives forfeit. The decision was swift and unanimous, and the chapter was ultimately declared excommunicate traitoris by the Ordo Hereticus. The Relicators had turned from the Emperor's light and were to be hunted down and destroyed, their gene seed wiped from the galaxy, and all records of their deeds expunged from the Imperial history. The Relicators had lost a great many of their number during the 13th Black Crusade, and their mobile fortress monastery, Ramilis-class starfront, had been severely damaged during their capture of the world of Finhet. It had taken all the skill of the chapter masters of the fleet to secretly move them to anchor in the Telos system, where they attempted to recover their strength and make use of the knowledge they had gleaned from the dark treasure they had recovered within the Diomedes archive. The chapter was all but destroyed in a cunning ambush by the Ordo Malus chamber militant, the Grey Knights, under the command of Inquisitor Xiaro, whom the Relicators had left for dead on the agri world of Fremas. After assaulting their fortress monastery, the assembled inquisitorial fleet hammered the dying remains of the Relicators' starfront with concentrated fire from their powerful gun batteries. Ramilli's starfront is a massive edifice and took time to fully destroy, but the Inquisition left only when every trace of the Relicators was reduced to dust. Only a few hundred Relicators Astartes survived this assault, and it is suspected these renegade space marines have fled to the relative safety of the Eye of Terror. It is currently unknown whether those survivors have thrown in their lot with the forces of chaos and became full-fledged Chaos Space Marines, or whether they continue their struggle of trying to turn the dark powers of the Chaos Gods against them and their servants for the good of humanity, much like other well-known Renegade Space Marine chapter, the Soul Drinkers. Dark Angels. Caliban was the site of many bitter battles throughout the war, and the Dark Angels chapter was forced to defend the ruins of their former homeworld against the blasphemous hordes of Abbadon the Despoiler, who were intent upon desecrating the holy ground. But despite the vindictive campaign of lies and profanity conducted by the heretic known to his followers as the Voice of the Emperor, which were seemingly designed to draw the Dark Angels into pointless battles away from the main fronts, they did in fact prove invaluable in many conflicts across the region. Despite the generally held view that the Dark Angels and their successors, collectively known as the Unforgiven, fought exclusively and selfishly for the ruins of Caliban, while Cadia burned. At the close of the war, Caliban was firmly in the hands of the Dark Angels, its secret safe for the time being. The Dark Angels had not only held Caliban against continuous attacks, but were able to counter the activities of a number of the fallen angels, better known as the Fallen, the rogue brethren who the chapter and its unforgiven successors have relentlessly hunted to the exclusion of all other considerations for 10 millennia. The so-called Voice of the Emperor put much effort into sowing disunity amongst the defenders of the Cadian Gate, seeding doubt as to just what the chapter was hiding amongst the frozen ruins of its homeworld. Rumors abound that the Dark Angels have since captured the Voice of the Emperor himself, only for this mysterious heretic to escape his prison en route to the Tower of Angels. Other rumors suggest that the Lord Castellan Creed now harbors a deep resentment towards the chapter, whose presence he feels might have proved critical in the defense of Cadia in the most desperate phases of the war, were the chapter not focusing its efforts upon Caliban. Having suffered the presence of the servants of the ruinous powers, the unholy places of the Caliban system have now been reconsecrated by the most senior interrogator chaplains of the chapter. And it is clear that whatever the result of the larger war, no devotee of chaos shall ever again approach within a light year of the Caliban system again. The mysterious leader of the Fallen, Cypher, has been hunted by the Dark Angels and their successor chapters for 10,000 years. Though it is not known whether Cypher was encountered directly during the war, unconfirmed reports suggest chapter's interrogator chaplains captured as many as 8 Fallen during the battles around the Caliban system, more than have been captured in such a short period in many thousands of standard years. Further reports link Cypher to the mysterious Voice of the Emperor on the world of Lelitar, who, it is rumored, was captured by the Dark Angels during the fighting, but whose cell was found empty upon the prison ship returned to the Tower of Angels aboard the Dark Angels' vast, mobile fortress monastery known as the Rock. Azrael, the Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels, was notably absentee at the Council of Chapter Masters that elected Logan Grimnar, their head at the start of the 13th Black Crusade. Azrael led the Dark Angels in the so-called Unforgiven chapters, according to his own inscrutable strategy. The only time he is known to have stood beside the other Imperial forces was when he held the company of Dark Angels upon Xerxia, where he joined with Lord Castellan Creed and his 8th Cadian Regiment to repel a force of Black Legionnaires from the world's High Basilica, though Abbadon succeeded in his sacrilegious mission to desecrate the High Altar as part of some dedication to the ruinous powers that would guarantee the success of the 13th Black Crusade. Azrael was instrumental in repelling the invaders for a time at least. Space Lanes. The Imperial Navy had fought with courage and vigor throughout the war, ruthlessly taking the battle to the arch-enemy, wherever it encountered them. Admiral Quarren had been hailed as a true hero of the Imperium for his masterful defense of the space lanes, was all that stood between the survival and utter defeat for the Imperium. Though Cadia was besieged, the Imperial Navy continued to command its space, and the space of all the sectors surrounding the Eye of Terror, and was able to offer support to the beleaguered forces on the ground. The only question is whether the rapid redeployment of almost the entirety of Battlefleet Gothic, along with a substantial proportion of Battlefleet Solar, will leave the Imperial Navy dangerously overstretched elsewhere and unable to maintain the level of operation required to hold the lines at the Cadian Gate. The Tau Empire. The Tau made several major expansions to their empire over the course of the 13th Black Crusade. If any one race or faction can be said to have gained from the wholesale destruction unleashed by Abbadon the Despoiler's campaign, it was the Tau. With imperial attention elsewhere, the local Tyranid and Orc menace temporarily contained, Tau's... I'm gonna have to take this one back a moment. With imperial attention was elsewhere, the local Tyranid and Orc menace temporarily contained, the Tau settlement colonies and pioneer teams reached far and wide into the outlying systems of the eastern fringe in the Damocles Gulf, the Perdu's Rift, and much further afield. Although the encroachment on imperial space had been relatively minor, the Tau have established no fewer than 5 third sphere expansion colony systems in a hollow around their existing sept worlds. These areas of expansion are already being referred to as the third sphere colonies by the diplomats of the Tau Watercast, and are rumored to include an unprecedented number of human auxiliaries. That the Imperium's attention is focused elsewhere is no doubt of comfort to those humans who have pledged their support to the burgeoning Tau Empire. The third sphere expansion was only finally halted in the 99th year of the 31st millennia, as a result of the Zeiss campaign waged against the Tau by an alliance of space marines as described above. The Webway. The Chaos Sorcerer Ahriman ripped open the walls of the Webway with information torn from the mind of Inquisitor Bronislaw Slevak. His plan to breach the fastness of the Black Library came dangerously close to success, but the combined forces of the mysterious Harlequin and an Ulthway strike force kept him from its gates. In a daring move, the Harlequins of the Red Mask freed Inquisitor Xevak from his captivity aboard Ahriman's ship. The Impossible Fortress. Though what they have done with him since is at present unknown, it is believed by Imperial astropaths that he may be incarcerated by the Eldar within the Webway. The Eldar have resealed the Webway against all invaders, expelling the traitor space marines of the Thousand Suns Legion, and rebuffed their own wayward kin, the Dark Eldar, back to their shadow realm of Comarag. For now, the hidden places of the Eldar and the terrible secrets they hide are safe from the predations of the lesser races. Those war zones only accessible through the Webway are now held by the Eldar, including the ancient crone world of Belial IV, a former Jew in a once mighty galaxy-spawning Eldar empire. Belial, I don't know why we're doing this world. Aeons ago, the crone world of Belial IV was the capital world of the ancient Eldar empire. Deep into the heart of the Eldar homelands, This verdant paradise was all but obliterated when the cataclysmic fall of the Eldar stripped away thousands of years of culture and beauty and replaced it with madness, desolation, and evil. Belial IV became a dust-strewn wreck of demon-infested ruins and crackling, baleful skies. Magun Ra, a Phoenix Lord, and therefore a veteran of webway travel, braved the depths of the Eye of Terror on a pilgrimage to the shattered Crone worlds, intending to find the faction of Eldar he believed trapped within the Eye of Terror since the fall. Taking with him a few of his favorite disciples, Magun Ra eventually reached the hex system of Belial IV. What he found there he would not speak of, and he was not seen again until he appeared upon Uthwi to form the infamous Eldar strike forces, filled with renewed energy and determination to defeat the forces of chaos. Towards the end of the 13th Black Crusade, many of the Eldar departed from war zones in Imperial space and gathered upon Belial IV under Magun Ra's command. They took the fight to the indigenous chaos forces with such unremitting fury that vast areas were reclaimed by the Eldar. The battle also raged around Belial IV in the labyrinthian dimension of the Webway, but it seemed that without the guidance of their leaders, the Ultiwi Strike Force suffered heavy losses to both the Dark Eldar and the Thousand Suns. The otherworldly guardians of the Black Library, fearing for their shadowy craft world's safety, revealed hitherto unknown capillaries of the Webway to the Ultiwi Eldar, enabling them to not only escape from the net drawing around them, but to stage a series of ambushes that broke the deadlock and turned the tide of the war in the Webway once and for all. The final, most decisive twist to this peculiar theater of war came when a demon horde led a counterattack against Eldar consolidating their hold on the Crone worlds. As sudden as it was devastating, to the great shock of the Eldar below, the withered and broken craft world of Altasar, thought lost to the warp for more than 10,000 Terran years, drifted into orbit above the Crone worlds. Hundreds of pallid, ghost-like Eldar joined their brethren on the field of battle, throwing back the demon tide with wave after wave of silent, grim warriors. Since that great victory, Belial IV has been reclaimed by the Eldar. What this and the reappearance of the lost of Talansar bodes for the Eldar race remains to be seen. It's gonna be a long one about Eldars, isn't it? The immortal Phoenix Lord Magun Ra took a vital role in the deciding fate of the Eldar over the course of the 13th Black Crusade. Responsible for the creation of the Ultiwi Strike Force, Magun Ra and his elite Blackguard fought across every sector by cunning use of the Webway. He ultimately led the Eldar to victory, even in the heart of the Eye of Terror, and after repelling Dark Eldar raids on Xerxia, fought alongside Lord Castellan Creed against Abbadon's forces at the Basilica Dufax. It is believed by many Farseers that the reappearance of the shadowy craft world of Altasar and its ghost-like inhabitants was purely due to the iron determination of the Phoenix Lord to locate and redeem his once-lost brethren. Oh god. Eidolon. The mysterious world of Eidolon, deep into the heart of the Eye of Terror, is one of the most remote and peculiar of the demon worlds, fought upon during the 13th Black Crusade. Divided into several continents where a different chaos power reigns over each, the battle zones of Eidolon present a panoply of strange and excruciating ways to die. Its shifting landscape defy all reason, and although it was once a beautiful maiden world of the Eldar, it has changed so irrevocably that no real trace of its former glory exists. Nonetheless, the victories won by the Eldar, notably the Eldar of the Belial craft world, have established several enclaves of sanity in the roiling seas of possibilities that characterize Eidolon. The Eldar hope that one day these islands can grow and become stable, and that eventually the secrets of Eidolon can be reclaimed. Fate of Eldrad Ultran. For the Farseer Eldrad Ultran, the most gifted and powerful of all Eldar seers. The onset of the 13th Black Crusade meant that the twisting fortress of possibilities through which he normally walked at will were denied to him. Binding his exceptional scrying abilities, his one certainty was that the darkness stood ready to engulf him, and possibly even his homeworld of Ulthui. After the formation of the Ulthui Strike Force, Eldrad divided many parts of his consciousness into shimmering waystones. As for Eldrad Ultran's fate, this bravest and most noble leader of the Eldar since before the birth of Slaanesh has perished. In a last-ditch effort to stop the Blackstone Fortress, talisman of value controlled by Abbadon, from crushing the Imperial defenders of Cadia, he and a select few warlocks teleported aboard. Within minutes, all the warlocks were drained of life by the fortress's bottomless thirst, and when Eldrad reached out to try to touch the Eldar spirit that he believed compromised the core of the fortress's sentience, he found only an extension of the hideous mind of Slaanesh, she who thirsts, the great enemy of the Eldar. As Eldar realized his folly, his soul was devoured by the Chaos God inhabiting the Blackstone Fortress, and the greatest Farseer of the Eldar was lost. However, a handful of waystones of the that Eldrad had created still remained active, causing the Eldar to believe that Eldrad is still alive, but trapped somewhere in the warp, perhaps at the mercy of Slaanesh. And this has been the 13th Black Crusade. This is like the most non-canonical version of it. Is the one that doesn't have Abbadon using the Blackstone Fortress to destroy Cadia. Unfortunately, it's the version that does not give us the phrase Cadia stands. But it's still awesome nonetheless.